Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction. Join our hosts as they speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your Friends in Recovery.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friends in Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Jersey Ed, along with my two co-hosts, Noontime with Sky and Tiff. What's up, ladies?
Hey.
We've gotten everybody together today. And,
that wasn't planned.
It was not planned.
Yes, exactly. So we missed you last week, Sky. We'll get more into that in a minute. But first and foremost, like the commercial said, I'd like to thank Genesis House for their ongoing support of this podcast. Of course, without them, we would just be a podcast. So thanks, Genesis House. We appreciate it. This week's topic, guys, is Step 5, a clinical look at Step 5 with Jeff Zeizel. You see that handsome man there in the corner, in my corner anyways. I don't know where he'll be shuffled at when this is aired, but there he is.
I'm in A corner.
He's in A corner. Yes, he is in A corner. Yes, exactly. And Jeff would like a background. So next time he's on, we're gonna have a background made for him. So, and I am coming to you live, well, almost live, Facebook Live right now, from the Friends in Recovery Library, and Tiff is in her office, and Skylar is in the Friends Recovery Cafe. Today's literature we're going to use, guys, if you want to go get it while we're doing our babbling back and forth here with our sober shout outs and all that. So stay tuned for some great recovery. We're going to have myself using the 12 and 12 and the life recovery workbook, which is on the steps also. Tiff, 12 secular steps, the 12 and 12 and the big book. Skylar is going to be using the NA workbook and the how and why. And Jeff, who is our smart residents here, is going to be using Barking Up the Wrong Tree by Eric Barker and Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. He'll be using those two books. So how is everybody doing today? Are you guys doing good?
Good.
I have a social networking gathering tonight. Chris's dealership is hosting an event so we can come in and see like their fancy cars that are in the premier location of Edina. We'll be serving shrimp and tiny cupcakes and things like that. Anyway, so
you look silly. Prepare for it.
It is a night out, so I'm glad for that. But hopefully, because they're serving wine and other alcoholic beverages, I'll find some clients for Genesis House while I'm there.
There you go.
So I will have my business cards on hand.
That's it. And also we like to welcome everybody Facebook Live. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. So you can also catch us on Facebook Live. Sky, we missed you last week. We know you had some work stuff to do that you couldn't get out of. And the team is all here now today, guys. The team is all here today.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Couple sober shout outs that I have, and I'm doing fine. How are you? How am I? You guys ask.
By the way, Ed, how are you?
I'm fine.
How are you in the library, Ed?
I'm coming from the library. Yes, the Friends in Recovery Library. Yes, I figured I would change it up.
Decimal system doing.
That's right. Well, let me grab my book. Hold on. Let me just grab a book. Okay, here it is. No, you can't see it. It's bad joke. Forget it. Hopefully
Bad
you're
joke.
listening
Just
to this,
move
not
on.
I thought that was
watching it.
good,
Okay.
Carl fixed it up with some graphics right there.
Yeah. So,
Wah,
but
wah,
anyways,
wah.
yeah.
Did you notice last week when he did bam question of the week?
We will
Yeah.
have that in again this week. He'll put it in. I guarantee it.
Nice.
So sober shout outs. I have a couple real quick. Of course, Carl at Sober Pod. Guys, listen to Sober Pod. Great show. We love Carl and Chelsea. They I just listened to one of their shows running the other day, and I'm back out running again. I'm feeling much better. So I'm back in the groove with them. And Dayton Strong Recovery 101, Joe is doing some service work for us. He is making some backgrounds for us. So when you see those things on YouTube and it's a flash frozen screen, Joe made those for us. So Joe, thank you very much. We want to give you a sober shout out, and go listen to Sober Pod, guys. Turn the dial to the left and listen to Sober Pod. Turn your dial back to the right and make sure you go to the good show. And that's the Friends in Recovery. It's we're definitely number one above Sober Pod. Dayton Strong Recovery 101. Joe has a great show. He does a lot of JFTs every night, whenever he feels like it. So make sure you tune into them. My last shout out is to somebody here who is here in the room with us every week in Facebook Live, is Bambi. Bambi D is celebrating 118 days today of really strong recovery. So congratulations, Bambi. We love you. We love your recovery. We love seeing you on all the meetings. And she also took the host of Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time, the beginners meeting. And I was on it this morning with about 8 or 9 of us on that meeting this morning. So come join us. And if you need some information how to get on the meetings, please email us at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com or comment below, and I'll be sure to get you out all that information. Our website will be up and running soon. I know I've been saying this since the beginning of the year, but our website is friendsandrecoverycommunity.org, and that will be up and running soon. And then you'll be able to access the meetings from there. Sober shout outs, ladies and gentlemen. Who has one or a few before we start the question of the week?
Well, I have one that I want to point out. I want to give a sober shout out to Deanne D, who, when the show airs, she will have 7 days. So that's a week, and that's a big deal. And I wanted to recognize Deanne for that. So good job, Deanne, on focusing on your recovery and putting yourself in the right place.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Amen.
I have Danielle.
Shout out Queen. Shout out Queen. You got to go. There she is. The shout out Queen. We missed you. We had to make shit up last week, Sky, because we had no idea. Don't ever not be here.
Danielle
P. Skylar.
Yes, you
do.
Good.
Loving you is right. I don't want to be wrong.
Right. So Danielle P. She is an alumni. She has 2 years this month. And Erin C., another alumni, she'll have 1 year this month as well.
Erin will?
Yes.
Erin. All right. Yes. Shout out to Erin.
And I might as well give myself a shout out because, I graduate this month from college and I'm going to ride that whole fucking I'm taking that. I'm graduating. Woo!
All right.
Awesome.
I was going to wait till you graduated, but you can give yourself a shout out now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carl put a cap and gown on her through this whole show.
You just go ahead and pat yourself on the back because you deserve it, sister.
That's right. Skylar worked hard for all that. She's gonna be even smarter than Jeff.
Yes.
Hey, we're all smart.
And we are, absolutely. And Jeff, do you have any sober shout outs for anybody?
I do. I have John C. He has 127 days.
John C.
He's really been working hard. So
all right.
Way to go, John.
Good job, John. Jeff, when I want to tell a little secret about Friends in Recovery way at the beginning of the shows, and you guys can go back and listen to them. So we used to do the sober shout outs. You remember that, right, Jeff?
And, I do remember. We up in Salem, New Hampshire.
Yep, up in Salem, New Hampshire. So we would get a sober shout out here and there. We would know somebody with a sober shout out, but nothing like this where we're really getting into it now. And like weeks would go by without anybody emailing us or any of us having any. So I would make Mike and Jeff just give me names and where they're at. Like, just make phony names, how many years and where they're at to get it going.
And here I took all that shit seriously and actually came to listen to your legitimate podcast with sober shout out.
We had to build, like the story of a Home Depot. They had to put like empty boxes on the shelves because they couldn't afford, right? They couldn't afford all the stuff when they first opened up their store. And empty boxes, they would pull stuff out of the trash, put it on the shelf. And, so that's what we had to do. We had to pull stuff out of the trash and put it on the shelf, right, Jeff?
It's called being resourceful.
It is. It is. Yes. But today we don't have to do that, guys. Exactly. Tiff, a quick on our meetings, and we'll get to the question of the week.
Sure. I just want to let everybody know that the Friends in Recovery community hosts 2 meetings a day, both at 12 and 7 Eastern Standard Time and at 8 a.m. on Saturday mornings. Now, all of those meetings, we have just got the go ahead to pull the plug. So all of those meetings will be listed on the aa-intergroup.org website. And then, of course, the Genesis House sponsored meetings will still be found at genesishouse.net under online groups or under connections. And so those are our meetings, Ed. We have specialty meetings. So go to the Genesis House website and check those out.
Thank you. Sky, any social media updates, or you want to tell them about social media real quick?
On Facebook, we have groups to follow us. The Friends in Recovery group, Friends in Recovery Adventures, the alumni only. And we are also on Instagram. And that's really it.
All right.
Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat.
She's on Snapchat. And guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. The like and subscribe is really important to all of us because it just pushes our show up more up the ladder, so we can get this good word out. And especially with Jeff on today, he's the man. So the question of the week did come from Jeff Zeizel. He actually sent me over the question of the week, and the question of the week, guys, and everybody. Oh, in the Facebook Live, if you guys want to shout out, like we just gave Bambi, just let us know who's here, and we'll give you a quick shout out throughout the show, whoever's here. So the question of the week is brought to you by Jeff Zeizel.
Question of the week.
Bam. That's where Carl's going to put the shit in. So
question of the week.
Yes, question of the week. That was good, Carl. That was good. So anyways, how old would you be if you didn't know your real age, and why? How old would you be if you didn't know your real age, and why? You guys in Facebook Live, put your comments in there, comment below, and we're going to start with Jeff because he came up with this question. So
thanks, Ed. So, when you'd asked me, like, come up with a question of the week, I said, I need a couple of days to think about it. So I did think about it. And, the age I come up with sort of varies at different times. I used to always feel, so when I was younger in my 20s, I used to feel I was like much older. And as I get older, I actually feel I'm much younger. So, and as we often do, I have like 2 answers. So one of the answers is that psychologically, emotionally, I feel like I'm in my late 20s, full of life, energy, passion, looking for excitement, things to do, like want to live life to the fullest. And that's sort of how I still am. Physically, I actually don't feel 20, but I feel like 40-ish. So I'll go with 40. And I think one of the reasons I choose 40 is, and I'm 67, but I choose 40 because I started running marathons. My first marathon I ran at age 40, and I'm not running currently, but I've run 21. So I still feel like I can do it. I still feel, my times have slowed down, but actually in the middle of those 20 years, that they actually got faster. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of a weird thing. And then, now they're slow again. But, you are how your brain determines all the reactions you have in life. So, and actually time is an illusion, like time is meanerless. Time, we're alive, we wake up, our eyes open, that's the day. But, time really didn't exist in early mankind.
That's true.
I'm obsessed with clocks and time.
Exactly.
for that
So
reason, because we're
the
so controlled
construct
by it.
of,
We're so ran by it. What would happen if we just let go of time?
yeah. I mean, it's the construct of like modern living. So imagine if you were just like deserted in some island. You don't know what day it is. You don't know what time it is. You
Yeah.
know, oh,
Yeah.
it's Friday. I feel good. Oh,
Yeah.
it's Sunday night. I feel lousy. I got to go to work tomorrow. But it's all like it's all based upon some of those concepts. But so I have two answers: 29 and 40.
All right, 29 and 40. Okay, Jeff. So Jeff is 29 in the brain and 40 in the body.
Right.
That's
So that
good. I
averages
like
out
that.
to what? That'd be 34 and a half.
There you go. It averages out to that. So Tiff, how about you? What do you feel like?
Okay, so
Shit, you gotta ask me.
right. Okay, so I actually in the brain feel much older than what I am. I'm actually 45. But I feel like I've lived 1,000 lifetimes. So and I've really listened and paid attention. So I filled that toolbox. So I would say mentally, I feel like I'm probably 55 or 65. I would say within that, range, depending on who you are. But physically, as I'm, active and doing whatever, I still have young kids and I have old kids. I have decades of children. So I feel like I'm forced to physically be like I'm 35, because I have to like still get up with a 4-year-old and do those crazy things and get on the floor and play and build Legos and all that stuff, right? Like I thought I would be a grandma by now, for Christ's sake, So, and I am old enough, and I have 3 children that are old enough to make me grandma. So, but they haven't yet, and that's okay. I guess I would say 60 mentally and 30, 35 action wise,
Wow.
like how I live, dress, act, feel.
Love it.
I guess. I don't know.
All right.
That's all I
good.
got.
That's a good
I don't
answer.
know what the hell the answer to that question. I was like, what the
I don't either.
fuck
That's
is
why
this
you guys are gonna be
question?
like, what are you talking? Like, so when I thought of the question, my first initial was I was gonna be like, I'm gonna say 27. Why? The Forever 27 Club, because I'm a music junkie. So that's where my head went. But that's not a good thing, right? Because
that is not a good thing.
Not at all, right?
No.
But I'm thinking, what age? And I'm like, why would this matter? Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm like, well, it's Forever 27. Kurt Cobain, all different stuff, right? But then I'm like, I don't know, because like I think when I'm around different people, different circumstances, environments, it changes. Like when I'm with my nephew who's under 2, I'm in Coco Melon and
Yeah, Coco Melon. Woo!
Right, and
they are not a sponsor of our show, but they can be.
They should be a sponsor of our show.
The chameleon in us, I think, is good in this aspect for age, right? Because then when I sit with my son and we watch anime as a 10-year-old, like that's cool. And then, but I feel like my soul is old. I feel like
yes, I agree with you on that.
My boyfriend like makes fun of me because I'm like, we're driving down the 295. He's like, it's just called 295. Like it's just called 295. It's not the 295 highway. Like
yeah, where are you from? LA? What are you from? Like Sober Pod land, where they say fuck in front of every freeway?
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting out the ice box, like that would be me.
Yeah. Why the extra words?
Right.
And then of course we live out of a book that uses words like juggernaut and stuff like that.
Juggernaut, bitch. X-Men.
What did I say last week, Tim? I said something. It was an old person word last week.
I can't remember, but I know it's from reading this damn book. It all comes from that damn AA book.
I know. So Sky, so in your 20s for your brain or your body, and
I would say like I'm 37 in real life. I would say like, I'm versatile, but I feel like I'm around somewhere as my age,
Okay.
Middle age, I could go either.
But an old soul.
Too old.
Yeah. That's a good age.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Ed, what about you?
Me. So I'm going to have to agree with Jeff. I think as you get, I'm 56 right now. And I think as you get older, I think in my brain wise, I'm thinking I'm in my 20s because I want to not learn everything. I don't want to be the smartest person in a room anymore. I don't want to, I want to learn from whoever I can. And
when were you the smartest person in the room, Ed?
that's true. I'm never the smartest person in the room, but
Sure
but
you are. Yes, you are.
that's
Yes, that's for sure.
But when I was younger, I didn't have this because I didn't get the chance really to learn much in my early ages. So that's why I feel brain wise, mentally wise in my 20s, and body wise, I don't feel 56. I do a lot of things that 56-year-olds can't even get out the couch, can't even make their way around an ice cream bowl, let alone, or out of an ice cream bowl, let alone off the couch. I mean, I was on a meeting this morning. I ran 3 miles. So I'm preparing for a half marathon next week in Atlantic City. I feel in my body wise, about the same age as Jeff said, 42, I feel, because that was my prime running. I got fast again in that age. And I got, I did a lot, bought a house then. A lot of good things happened in my early 40s. And I'm not saying a lot of good things aren't happening now, but if I was to wake up one day and not to know my age, I figured body wise would be 42 and brain wise would be my 20s. So
that's why this was a difficult question for me, because I have the least amount of sobriety, but yet I'm at the age where both of you guys said you'd ideally be, right? Like, I am living my best life right now. And so I actually am not like those women, and I don't think Sky is either, where we get all worked up about like, oh, I'm turning a year older, things like that. Like, I'm really appreciating where I'm at right now and accepting where I'm at. And I like my life right now. When I was in my 30s, I was a motherfucking shit show.
Yeah.
When I was in my 20s, it was worse, and I'm living my best life right now. So I appreciate where I'm at right today as well.
Absolutely.
That's so healthy that you come to terms with that you know that.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. You have such insight.
Well, you know what, Jeff, this is a good, healthy question for people. I know the show is not about this. We'll get to step 5 in a minute, but this was a good, healthy question because it really made us think. When Jeff texted over, he texted me a bunch of questions over. When he texted that one over, I'm like, this is going to make us think. This is going to make the audience think. And guys, comment below and let us know what your ages are. If you have a mental age and a body age, or just one age that you don't, if you didn't know what you were, or send us an email at help@friends-in-recovery podcast and let us know. We'll read it on the air next week and figure it out. But it's just a healthy question.
Comment below in the, on the YouTube stuff.
Yep. Comment below. Yep. So, but it was such a good, healthy question because it made you think back of all the good times. I had to think back of all the good times because, when I play those tapes, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I remember when I did this, or I remember when I did that, or always a drunkalog story when I'm bringing up my past. Right. And I had to think back about some good times. I didn't want to be an age where I was a shithole mess. Right. So I had to think about those good times. So thank you, Jeff. This was an amazing question. I got a lot out of it. So it made me think.
It's interesting when you get together with friends that you knew in high school or college or, at a certain age, and you knew them when you were 18, when you're with them again, you sort of feel 18. I mean, you do the same silly jokes and pick on each other and rank on each other. It's like, it's amazing how you can quickly transfix into that, time frame. So
exactly. Well, and we just did that in a camping trip a couple of weeks ago. We're all a bunch of us, grew up together at one camping, and we felt like we were back camping again. Not drinking, camping. Just camping sober. So, but good question. Thanks, guys.
Nostalgic moment, Chef. Like almost, it's like a actual moment, like living in the past almost, but like looking back and
Yeah, it is. It's bringing up the good past. So, all right, guys, we're gonna get into step 5 now.
Wait. I save all these answers, but I didn't write yours down, Ed. What was your answer again?
My age was
45.
20s in my brain, 42 in my physical body.
Okay. All right.
So, all right. So we're gonna get on to step 5 now. Step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And I think this is I couldn't wait for Jeff. It's always every week I couldn't wait for Jeff to come on because he just has such great insight. And that's why him and I get along, because I'm going to go up and see him next week, and him and I just talk for hours on recovery and just life and good stuff. It's just amazing, like, when I get together with Jeff. But he has good insight, and this step especially really works. Because this step could be done with a therapist, and that's one of the questions I have for you in a minute. But admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, this is a step where you have to talk it out. You have to admit things that are hard to admit, and also, in therapy, this, I'm sure this happens in therapy too, while people are sitting there, Jeff, and start spilling their guts out, the exact nature of our wrongs. Where did I go wrong? How did I go wrong? And this is where, when, why, and how. And I'm not even sure if there was anybody in your practice throughout the years that ever did a fifth step with you, but I'm sure there was. And and I'm going to turn it over to you in a minute, but I do have to tell on myself, I am not done with my fourth step yet. Okay. So I have to get my fourth step done. I'm going to get it done this weekend with my sponsor. It's almost done. And then I'm going to get into my fifth step. Now, I did a fifth step years ago, but now I'm trying to do the steps I'm doing the steps as we go through. So I got to tell on myself, because if I don't tell on myself, guys, I'm going to keep putting it off. And that's human nature. And that's the part of the talking. That's the part of admitting things, our character defects. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the up and coming months. But if I don't talk about it and I don't get it out, I'm not going to do it. So again, Tiff, what'd you have?
Well, there's a really good thing about this step that I think particularly pertains to this conversation with Jeff. And it's in the Daily Reflections on May 9th, page 138. And it says walking through fear. And I refer a lot to the big book, and on page 76 is all about step 5. But the phrase it is talking about is, it says, if we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. And I think that, and I'll go on to read the rest, but particularly pertains to Jeff and how I would like to ask later, like how he helps people become willing to talk about these things that are so far, often we,
like plaguing fears.
Often, we have people that are stuck in their present stage character, is what it's called in the book. We're stuck in our present stage character, and we're so busy pushing far down inside, those things that we don't want to share, hoping that they will never see the light of day. And so this walking through fear, where it says, when I had taken my fifth step, I became aware that all my defects of character stemmed from my need to feel secure and loved. To use my will alone to work on them would have been trying obsessively to solve the problem. In the sixth step, I intensified the action. I had taken it in the first 3 steps, meditating, and on the step by saying it over and over, going to meetings, following my sponsor's suggestions, reading and searching within myself. But during the first 3 years of sobriety, I had a fear of entering an elevator alone. That's part of our fifth step, is our fears inventory, right? And our fourth step. One day I decided I must walk through this fear. And so I could go on reading, but I just would like to ask Jeff how he helps people get out of that stage character presence where they're operating in fear and suppressing those memories deep down inside, which is part, directly related to our fifth step.
Well, that's quite simple. Xanax. Oh, no, wrong show.
No, wrong show.
Sorry,
Very
wrong
good,
show.
Ed.
That could be triggering to somebody. Cut that out.
Show's over, guys.
All right. See you next week.
I see your message, Chris Keller. I love you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Ed, you had beautiful timing on that.
Yeah.
You guys were all off the screen this morning, and no one was on yet. And Chris came in, and he was in here, and I was like, "Hey, Chris!" And I was like brushing my teeth. And you guys, I don't know where you guys were. He caught me brushing my teeth on camera.
That's
Early
great.
morning stuff.
So what's great about this is, like, we can just be ourselves.
Yeah.
We can joke, we can make fun of ourselves, we can say inappropriate things. It's okay. So, like, when you think about the fifth step, it's like, what's the underlying theme? You have to take a risk and you're hoping not to be judged. And that's sort of how we behave. And we're not judging each other. And maybe we'll talk about things after the show as we had done before. But we're willing to talk about it because we're willing to be open and listen. So when I see people in my office, I often say to them, like, hey, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. But you'll have to figure that out yourself, because I can't tell you that it's going to be safe. You have to make that determination yourself. And by how I behave and how I share things and self-disclose and, not react in a overt way if someone says something that perhaps is, somewhat troubling, I really work hard at being non-judgmental, and that creates the stage that you want people then to sort of share and be open. Now, are we judgmental? Of course, we make judgments all day long. It's how we survive. Like, can I go fast enough to get through that light? It's turning yellow. That's a judgment. And sometimes it's the wrong judgment. Sometimes it's a bad judgment. Sometimes people play it safe. And I know it's interesting because driving in one's car and observing traffic patterns, or if I'm a passenger and my wife's driving and someone else is driving, I often think like, oh, if it was me, I'd be passing this guy already. And that's how I'm wired. Other people are afraid. I'm staying in the middle lane and I'm calm down. When I drive, I'm in the left lane. When my identical twin brother drives, he's in the middle lane. We're wired slightly different. And he and I have the same DNA. But it is interesting. So when we think about the ability to sort of share some painful things, you really want to hope that the person's not going to judge you. So as I was preparing, for our show today, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, the unsung heroes are the sponsors. They don't get enough credit. They work,
and that's why I asked this question, because as a person who sponsors people, all three of us, this is where we need your help. Is how can we help these people in their fifth step? And I loved what you said even already, and I know you're not even finished, about setting up a non-judgmental space.
Yeah, exactly right. And the amazing thing about when you say these words and it comes out and you're looking at the person you're speaking to, the sponsor, and I've had a lot of people do the fifth step with me. And I said, oh, are you ready? And I always say, listen, it's not going to be as bad as you think. We will live another day. This time tomorrow, there's a cognitive behavioral technique, time project voting. This exact time tomorrow, you can think back about today and how glad you are that it's over, or how well it went, or how afraid you were. But guess what? It's the following day and you're okay. The earth didn't come to an end. Your world did not collapse. So and I think you had mentioned earlier, Tiff, about fear. That's one of the underlying themes that really makes it very, very challenging, that we often have tremendous fear, and fear is sometimes okay. It sort of keeps it safe. It's like anxiety. Why is it that I don't miss planes yet so far? Because I have a little anxiety. I want to get to the airport on time. I give myself plenty of time. Is that anxiety? Is that good planning? Is it, being on top of things? A little bit of all the above. A little anxiety is good. It keeps us safe. So, people will often think about in recovery, like, oh, I really got this drinking stuff down, or this drug use stuff down. Now I think I can do it because I've learned to manage it better. Wrong for most people, by the way, because this doesn't go that way. Typically, you go back to the old pattern. But the person who has a little anxiety will say, yeah, maybe I could, but I don't really want to do that because I think it's going to be a disaster. The person who has no anxiety, oh, this is easy. I now know how to drink safely. Well, if you're an alcoholic, there's no such animal. You cannot drink safely. The only safe drinking is no drinking.
Yes.
I do a lot of fifth step. I volunteer at a treatment center to do fifth steps with women, and I do it several times a month. And what I've found is that if I spread it over 2 days versus just doing it all in one day, I give them, because I'm on the road, so I don't have a lot of time anyway. So they get an hour of my time over lunch, right? And so that first day, at the end, I have the ability to say, now that wasn't so hard. Don't you feel better? And then say, now tomorrow, really reflect on those things that you weren't going to share and write those down.
Yeah.
And it seems a lot better that they, building that rapport and trust.
I think that's a really good way to do it. I think
Yeah.
I would have loved my sponsor to do it that way with me because that she said the same to me at the end, you know, don't you feel so, and there was some things I left off for sure the first time I did my first step. So that's very key.
So did I. And I learned the hard way not to do that.
Me too.
That's very insightful. You're right. Because sometimes, you know, people say it and then they're really holding back because they have shame. They're ashamed of what they
Of course.
They don't really want to say it. And that's okay. It's normal. And when I see people like that, I say, listen, you know, you could say as much or as little as you want. This is not about me. It's about you.
Exactly.
But if there's things you feel like you need to say but can't, write them down. Put it on a piece of paper, you know, and look at it. And you can hand it to me or not. You can burn it.
Yes.
But writing it down also gets you off. Because what's the end goal here? The end goal is to be the best person you can be, to understand yourself, and to be accountable and own your behavior, and then change the behavior you don't like. Because the real and underlying theme here is, let me get out the bad stuff and let me identify what I want to, you know, how I want to live, the new person. So I always say, like, step 5 is like pulling into a you know, train stop. You're offloading all the old baggage. Once you offload the old baggage, the train leaves the station. Guess what? You're free. You have freedom. Next stop, freedom. You go into a new place, and you can get rid of all this negative stuff and enter a new area and feel better. And then you can integrate the person you want to be. You know, like Scott, you know, congratulations, graduating college, fantastic. You know, not easy when you have a family and you're in your mid-30s. You know, it's a different experience. And, you know, but that was something you wanted to do. That's freedom. And by the way, you know, 50% of people in the United States go to college. Only half of those folks graduate. So 1 out of 4 people in the United States have a college degree. Not a lot of people. You know, we're a smart country, but it takes a lot of effort.
That makes me feel awesome. I'm just going to say.
And it's hard work, and it's expensive. And some people say, well, you don't really need a college degree. Well, you don't need to get up early and run 20 miles, Ed, right? You know, but you do it. Why?
Yes. It's still helpful to have. It's still going to benefit you. You're still going to have times where you're going to need it.
Exactly.
But think of how much of who you are today is attributed to doing an appropriate 5th step with the right person, you know, because the whole goal is to identify relationship issues, character defects during the 5th step, and change into what you idealistically would like to look like down the road versus what you were in the past. The 12 secular steps has step 5 written as Jeff honestly admitted to myself and to another human being the results of my inventory, including my defects of character. And I'm wondering, like, you know, there's a difference of wording between this step in the secular versus the AA step, because in the AA version it says, or NA version, to God and to another human being. So there's a spirituality aspect. So the importance of that spirituality piece, and also the importance of identifying, sharing, and discussing those character defects. How I want to know your thoughts on adding that spirituality aspect or not having it, what the difference is there. And then also how important it is to do this with another human, to objectively look at your character defects and discuss them, and your patterns, to look at them from a different way. How do you feel? I mean, this is your job. This is your wheelhouse, man.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and a great concept, because it's really about, so I always say, like, and I've brought this up before, as a clinician, as a therapist, I always say, rule number 1, meet people where they're at. You know, it's not my inventory, it's not my agenda, it's what they're about. And I try to explain to them, like, hey, we're the same team. You know, I'm on your side, and I'll give you feedback, and we'll operate together and so on. But, you know, it's really important for people, you know, if they're a spiritual person and God is in their lives, and that's fantastic, then, you know, we go take that approach. If someone's an atheist, that's also fine. Because at the end of the day, it always goes back to the individual. You know, when they're in my office, it's not about me, it's about the person, you know, metaphorically sitting on the couch. So, but I do have a couch, they sit on the couch. So, and I think, it's very interesting because you're right. The ability to self-disclose and share things has magical powers. You let it out, and what's happening? You're looking at their reaction. You look at, are they going to be aghast? Are they going to be supportive? Are they going to cry? Are they going to be neutral? Are they going to, be offended? And we pick those things up in milliseconds. So that book that we had talked about earlier, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, the whole concept of that book is that within an eye blink, we pick up information. You can tell in a very short period of time, 45 seconds, if you like someone, and a lot of it's unconscious. You can also tell if you don't like them. And sometimes we're incorrect. Sometimes we get, it's a labor of love, or we thought we liked them, then we discovered, we didn't like them because they were maybe dishonest or they changed and so on, or we misread things. But, when you're working on the fifth step, the ability to share painful things to another person takes tremendous courage. So what happens after you do that? Self-growth, self-esteem. You do something hard, you feel better. So what's recovery about? Being the best person you can be, enjoying the journey of life, helping others, but having positive, personal self-satisfaction, self-esteem, self-confidence, feeling good about yourself. So,
and Jeff, an example of exactly what you're just talking about, and I had that euphoria feeling this morning. I did it over a year ago when I was running. I thought about it. I did a thing called the calendar run. You remember I was doing the calendar run.
Yeah,
So you run the mile of the day, right?
Right.
And day 1 mile, 2 mile, all the way to, and I did it in June. So 30 miles at June 30th ends up being 480 miles, give or take, something like that.
You really like leap years.
Yeah, exactly. I do it in leap years. But what I thought about today was, like, what an amazing job I did. Like, I look back at it, it was so hard to do. I wanted to give up along the way. I wanted to quit. But now, like you said, you look back at it and it's done and over with. That's a notch in my belt. That's in the record book now. And what if I quit? What if I quit on day 5? Like, this is too hard. I'm never going to do it. I ain't going to get through it. And same thing with our drinking, and same thing with step 4 and 5. I'm not going to get through. Maybe I'll just put on my step 4, the stuff that I'm not going to be embarrassed about, or maybe what my sponsor can handle. Because then when I have to go talk to him in step 5, I'll still look like a superhero. You know what I mean? But it slows us. It makes us think differently. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, Jeff, is that, be okay with whoever you are. You said you meet people where they're at, right? I love that. So you're not going to try to change something when they come barreling in the room. You're going to meet them where they're at, and you're going to work with them and move them up from there. And this is perfect for step 4 and 5, especially step 5. I got to meet you where you're at. This is kind of, a lot of heavy duty shit that's going to come off. And I like exactly what you said. It's like a train pulling into a station. You throw all those bags out. You're not carrying them like this anymore. They're all thrown out, and you have a shoulder bag on your bag, because that's what you need. You're going to the next stop and taking a new life.
Yeah. I mean, you literally lighten the load. So, I was just going to say something, Ed, which, it's remarkable how, I remember we talked about the calendar run. What a hard thing to do. What a great thing to do. What you have to have such presence of mind and motivation and desire and stick-to-itiveness, and be truly physically fit, or you will be harder, and you become physically fit, and you are physically fit. But what's interesting, Ed? If you didn't run it, let's just say you bailed. 28, forget it. I'm not doing it. So, and you didn't do it. Would anyone judge you? No, but you would. So what does that tell us? We're our hardest critics. We are our hardest critics. And sometimes you gotta forgive yourself, because maybe you're injured and you can't do something. Or maybe you can and you just quit. And you got to learn from that. And you feel bad because you beat yourself up. I don't know if that's good or not, but I think it's being accountable. So if you say I'm quitting, don't beat yourself up. Learn from what happened that you did, bail out on doing something good, or you picked up again, or you started using or doing the wrong thing. Try to understand what happened, and then say, okay, do I want to correct this and change it? As I talked about in the past about Stoicism, the ancient Greeks and Romans.
This is for you, Carl.
It was Stoics. So Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, one of the first Stoics, they were mindful people. So what would he say? one of the great things he would say is that when someone says something good to you, that's the clacking of tongues. And when someone says something bad about you, they criticize you, they say wrong things about you, also the clacking of tongues. That's my tongue clacking. The although it looks like a duck. So, but the clacking of tongues, good or bad, doesn't matter. What matters is how I see it. So a compliment to me or a criticism, I mean, they're irrelevant. I don't have to get caught up in that. It's what's important to me. So when you run 31 miles on the calendar run, you should feel remarkably fantastic. And it doesn't matter what people say.
No.
And because it's you. And that's step 5. It's about the individual dealing with their pain, dealing with their growth.
Yes.
You know, there's a couple of things that I hear you say over and over often on our shows, Jeff, and that one is that we're not here to change the world in a day, and Rome wasn't built in a day, right? This is progress. We have progress. And I love that you always tell us to meet people where they're at. When I'm doing these 5 steps with ladies, I find that their self-confidence at this point is still not there, right? They're not able to look people in the eye. They're, feeling shameful and things like that. And so I take my notebook, which I would have anyway, but I just take notes the whole time and look down, and just listen. And I add as we go through each one. But when I'm looking down, I feel like all of a sudden they start opening up even more because they're not having to feel that energy of mine or gauging my reaction, like you're saying.
That's guilt, a guilt feeling.
I want to say, when you're taking notes of that person, you know what they think? Oh my God, this person cares about me. They care so much. They're listening. They're writing my words down. I mean, that's a tremendous sort of gift and compliment to that person and to you for being so kind and thoughtful to take it so, meaningful and serious.
Because I do take it serious. I want to find their patterns and identify, their relationship issues and things like that with them, because that's what helped me. Our book says on page 73, it says, psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we, the medical profession, have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chances for recovery, is what it says in our book, because it's basically telling us to reflect on how often we lied to our doctors and our medical professionals and the psychologists and the psychiatrists about the truth of us being an addict and alcoholic. How often do you find that happens, Jeff, where people you just know are not being completely honest about their addiction, and how do you help those people?
Yeah, it does happen. I don't want to say frequently, but it does happen. Of course it happens. And then sometimes they'll come clean.
Yeah.
Or they get caught up and they, eventually it all sort of, comes to the surface. And I would say, well, I'm not offended, because I understand, number one, the disease of addiction, your brain is slightly hijacked and you may not always feel comfortable saying, and why do people lie? Why do people not tell the truth? There are many reasons. Most of the time it's too painful, or they're afraid of getting in trouble or getting hurt. And there are people though who do lie for attention.
Yeah.
They make up stories because they feel inadequate. Their self-esteem is low, so they have to pretend they're somebody else.
Yeah.
But who are they lying to? It makes no difference to me. I mean, sometimes I do, feel a little put off because, I'm human and no one really wants to be lied to. But, I understand where it comes from. And I'll say you're coming and you're wasting your time. My time is valuable, but if this is how we use it and you're going to be dishonest with me, so be it. But, at the end of the day, it's about you. So you can either do it the healthier way or, you know, the improper way.
But that's where you talk about, Jeff, meeting people where they're at. You're not forcing somebody to tell you the truth, the whole truth. And they're not under investigation. When they walk into your office, it's a safe zone. It's not an investigation. Because a lot of people think when I walk into a clinician's office or even sitting in front of my sponsor, he's going to interrogate me or she's going to interrogate me. No, that's not how this step goes. It's you doing all the work. And you have to be comfortable what level you're going to be at. Because guys, here's the thing. You're not just going to do 1, 4th, and 5th step. So you don't have to get it all right. And some of us don't put all the stuff down sometimes, like Skylar was saying earlier. You know, we don't put it all down. But again, let's go back to that train. All those bags aren't thrown out. So we got to get off the next stop with a whole handful of fucking bags again, guys. And then you know what, the next stop, we might throw a little bit more out, then a little bit more. And that's the 4th and 5th step over and over again until those bags are completely out. Like Jeff said, I love that analogy, Jeff. I'm such a visual person that I can see it's just amazing that analogy. But
sometimes there's suitcases that take a lot of courage and willingness to put on that train.
You don't want to let them go.
That's what happens. And that's what, like, you know, the workbook says, no matter what our fears stem from, right? Most of members have pretty much done the same thing and deal with them. We pray for courage and willingness, read the section from How It Works in step 5, and seek reassurance from other members. So we ask people's feedback. How did they get through it? I give examples sometimes. You know, if I can sense they're kind of lying sometimes, I might even say like, you know, I might give an example where I did the same thing, but not directly say it, you know, but just so they know that like, yo, me too, me too. You're human just like me. You know what I mean? And meeting the client where we're at, that helps build that trust even more because they're valuing what I say. They're valuing where I place the trust. Like, there's so many levels on that. And, you know, I think that when we meet the client where we're at, that's just huge in building the relationship. And
you want something else? There was a study done about what's the most effective therapy, and they, you know, and what's the best model to utilize? So should I see a clinical social worker or a pastoral counselor or a psychiatrist or nurse practitioner or someone with a PsyD or a PhD or an EDD? There's, you know, different masters, and, you know, there's a counseling psychology different than someone who has a clinical license. At the end of the day, and different orientations and a cognitive behavioral thing and Rogerian and existential and Christian count. At the end of the day, the number one thing, the most important thing, all those things are meaningless. The most important thing is, I like the person I was talking to. If I'm the patient, I'm walking in an office. Did I like that gal or guy?
Yeah.
If I like them, I'm going to get better faster. If I don't like them, it's sort of a waste of time.
Yeah.
There's a good analogy in here, Jeff, so you can even understand us more from the addiction side of things. That is just exactly what we're talking about not feeling as though we can tell the truth yet, or it's too painful to tell it. But it says sometimes the world falls apart because it should fall apart. I knew I was caught in the cycle of addiction like a lab rat caged into a circular exercise wheel. I was constantly giving all I had to chase a high, while at the same time running from the shocks and consequences of active addiction. Nearly every thought and every effort of mine just kept the insanity going. I knew I couldn't break that cycle alone. I was exhausted, yet at the same time, truly ready to accept help and work on the solution. But where was this solution and who would help? You know, awesome. We get caught in that cycle of lies, you know, and our natural instincts, even today. Skylar and Ed and I have all said our natural instinct is to lie, even if it's the smallest thing. Like I naturally think to tell you that, you know, I'm at Target versus Walmart. Well, who the fuck cares? I don't do that now, but my mind still goes there. I think it's my first thought in my head. It may not be the words that come out of my mouth. But
I was just gonna do that this morning when I say I ran 3 miles. I was gonna say 4 miles, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's like the first thought in my head. It's like, you lie about the mile. Like, well, who the fuck cares? It's 3 or 4 fucking miles. Who cares if you're Walmart and fucking? But it's
because in my head it says just embellish a little.
Exactly.
Just embellish.
Yeah. But we're lying to ourselves.
Hide. Suppress. suppressed,
Mission, yeah.
right?
So if you said sometimes the world falls apart because it should fall apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
It's
that
not
is
falling back together, actually.
yeah, it's things because that world that we're living in shouldn't exist, right?
Yep.
That world that we're living
Right.
in, it's just not gonna. It's like a 500-year-old house that we didn't take care of. It's gonna fall apart. Once it falls apart, we build a new house on it. It's bigger, better, faster, and stronger.
Well, it's like hitting your bottom.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes.
it's the only way it changes.
Yeah.
And that's what it says. It says a conscious contact with crisis is what I needed. And so in the end, the negative consequences of my addiction motivated me to stick it out in AA and NA and do my best because I had nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
So always, we talked about it on a meeting this morning about not forgetting where we come from, right? Yes, there is a solution, but I can't forget that self-will powered solution that I was trying to do on my own to try to quit by myself or withdraw by myself or continue to use by myself, right? That was my solution, but there is a solution and it is a necessary solution.
You know what's interesting is when people are in active recovery, active addiction, and they're not doing well, they lie about it. When people I don't have a problem. What are you talking about? When people are in recovery and are proud about it, they share. Oh yeah, I'm an addict. I'm a recovering alcoholic. It's a badge of honor. Why? Because it's so hard to get out of that. They're proud of doing their recovery, and they walk. They hold their head up high because they feel good about themselves. They went through hell. They went through a terrible experience. And, we know it's different for everyone, but then they get through it and they feel good about themselves. They want to share that. They are proud. And, the beauty of 12-step programs and being in groups is that you think you're bad. You think you're a terrible person. Then you hear someone else all of a sudden, like, hey, I'm not so bad.
Yeah.
I feel good about myself. And conversely, I see that person, they're doing fantastic. I want to be like that guy.
Exactly.
It's like motivation. It's like there's a role model there for me.
Yeah. Jeff, I want to bring this back to very simple. I got a very simple question for you, and it pertains to admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Why does talk therapy work? Just why? Why does it work?
Yeah.
And why? It obviously works because it's in step 5. It's been around for 80 years. So
it's a really fantastic question. And we don't always know, we don't always know, but we do know the ability to let these words out instead of it sort of being in our head, to verbalize. There's a phenomena that we call self-talk. You can talk to yourself, come on, you could, like Ed, you've run marathons, I've run marathons. Come on, we can get up this hill. Come on, don't quit now. Let's keep going, because we have this unconscious or, little voice in our head that tells us always to quit, always to do the wrong thing, always to sort of, because it's easier. So one of the things about step 5, it's not easy. It's hard. And hard things in life have meaning. Hard things in life give us victories. They give us self-worth. They give us self-esteem. Studying hard at age 37 and graduating college is hard. And then you feel good about that. So it's easy to not do any of that, but there's no payoff. So the ability
There's no payoff.
to do
You're right.
something, to verbalize, is hard, but then you hear the words, and then you also see how other people react. But sometimes we talk to ourselves. So I talked about this in the past, but not so recently. But David Goggins, Navy SEAL, an amazing motivational speaker, probably the world's one of the best ultra marathon runners.
Yes.
And he has a thing called the accountability mirror. So he would take little stickers and put them on the mirror that he would look at every morning, and think about the things he was not truthful to himself about, and put it on and read it. And that allows you to change, because when you verbalize it and you hear those words, you can then retain some of that information. Of course, you always remember most of your deficits, but you can retain the information, and then you can make change. Then you can decide what you want to do. So it is interesting. Sometimes I'll have a therapy session and someone walks in. I have not said a word by and large for the entire session, which is hard for me. So I'm sitting there quietly. I have not said a word. And the person talks for 15 minutes to an hour, and they'll say, "That was a great session. Thank you so much." My pleasure. You're welcome. And I haven't really
Did anything. Yeah.
What did I do? I created an environment that was safe for people to sort of express themselves. And feel, that they can trust. And they also know that if they're going to talk to me and they want, quote, advice or recommendations or ideas or my feedback, that they're willing to take it. So that's one of the good things about step 5. You let it out, but you also have to be willing to hear what they say.
Yes.
You have to be willing to hear what your sponsor says. And, and
Jeff, I hope you're willing to hear what Carl has to say, because he just joined us in the room and he said that he has a man crush on you and he asked you to marry him.
Well, I think we'd be very happy together.
Yes, you probably would be.
Paul's pretty cool.
That's a yes. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
No.
Paul.
But no, you're right. It's the safe environment. It's the comfortability of the person who you're talking to. I had a therapist when I walked in the door, right? I knew the first session, and I was in recovery. I knew the first session, this was not a safe place for me, right? It was definitely not a safe place for me. But, Jeff, believe it or not, I don't pay him, and he sits at dinner with me. I buy him a dinner, and then I get all my shit out, and I have a therapy session, probably a 2-hour therapy session, and he doesn't realize it. But that's how it works, guys. Is you just talk it out, like you said. We don't know exactly why, but when you're confessing your confession in the Catholic Church, in the Christian Church, it's the same way. You get it, but there's a difference between confessing your sins and moving on from your sin.
Well, because when you're having confession and moving on, you're looking for absolution. That's totally different. We're not priests. We can't offer that through the church, right? Like, we're sponsees, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, right? And none of us are any of those things all put together. So I can only tell you what worked for me as a sponsee. I can't talk to you about medications.
Exactly.
I can't talk to you about all the painful things that happened in your forest. That's what you go to Jeff about, right?
Yes.
That's where I say a therapist helped me. Let's not focus too much on that stuff. Let's talk about your character defects and things like that, your patterns, what you've
are some
identified.
issues you would take to a therapist then that you wouldn't want to, like, what are some examples of that? Of like,
so like what I'm saying is so what I took to my therapist was, those painful things that happened to me in the past, big T things.
Okay.
I also talked about little T things that I didn't understand why I was acting the way I was acting, because, it turns out it's because of how I grew up, right? So I had questions on how I grew up. How did that affect my addiction and alcoholism?
Yes.
How did it affect my behaviors today? And how can I change them? I also had to go to a therapist because I simply didn't understand feelings or emotions. I couldn't even identify them, nor understand what they were, let alone how to express myself or work through those emotions.
Well, the therapist office is a very safe place because, first of all, by law, Jeff can't get on here and blab about Susie Q and everything that went on in her life. Jeff would be just done with.
Yeah, my license, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is also another good place. Another good place to do your fifth step is with a therapist, because it can't go anywhere. Because think about it, guys. You're walking into a room. Now, I know my sponsor for 25 years, 26 years, probably even longer, because we used to get together. I tell him everything. I tell him the color of my shit. I tell him when my toenails hurt. I tell him everything. There's nothing I don't hide from Andy. But but when you've just picked, you said, pick anybody in a room. Okay, well, I'll pick you. But who the fuck are you? Like, who are you, Mr. Sponsor? I don't know you. And now we're going to go my fourth step. And I'm going to tell you some deep, dark secrets of how I'm feeling or how I treated people or how I treated myself. So the therapist, I believe, Jeff, is a great, safe place, because once it gets in there, it's locked in that room and it goes nowhere. Zero place. It goes nowhere.
You just want to be careful with that. Like, Jeff is experienced with step work and addiction.
Yeah.
So you just want to be tread lightly with that. Like, I would do a fifth step with Jeff, but I've had some therapists in the past. I probably would.
Oh yeah. Of course.
So I just want to tread lightly with that one. I agree.
I went through 2 therapists before I found the right one, before I was actively able to build trust and actually work through a reconstructive process, because I needed a reconstruction. I couldn't just tell people just offload my resentments and my character defects and listen to a sponsor tell me what they did and what they found in the book. I needed a total reconstruction.
Well, process. You have to process it.
and also there are things that we are told to share, like when we're in large social groups, it's better not confessing like large details of like a victim of rape or child physical abuse or sexual abuse or highly traumatic experiences, because those could be triggers for others too. You know, and I need to be self-aware of that. And that's where this book, you guys, for all of us, is really, really helpful about how to work with a sponsee. Really, this has helped me more about how to talk about, you know, the brain and what you can talk about with what's written, you know, facts.
And there's some things a therapist knows that a sponsor might not know. Like I learned about SLAA and ACOA from my therapist. And guess what? I didn't know, like, till years later, seeing a therapist up here in Jersey. I had 3 years clean living in Florida. So up here, it had to have been more than 3 years, right? And I was talking about something with my therapist, and he said, you know, I'm really going to encourage you to go to SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, because of my love addiction. And he suggested it for probably 6 months to a year. Wow. And he kept asking me to go. And same with ACOA. And those patterns, my sponsor didn't have experience with. So she didn't see it in my 4th step, like some of the things that came out in therapy.
Well, Carl from Silverpot in the room said, and this is perfect into this. He said he took his sexual abuse and physical abuse into a therapist, because,
which is what I did.
Yeah, because
I only said I had childhood trauma when I dealt with my 5th step. And then worked with a therapist on the specifics of those details.
Well, that because you have to process that. You can't just throw it out and to a non-professional. And Jeff, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. Like people, you kind of tell you all this stuff because then they have to process it. But if you tell a sponsor who's never had any kind of abuse, especially sexual or physical abuse, okay, all right, well,
or
good.
Professional experience, even
exactly,
of how to deal with those things.
So and once you find some other stuff like ACOA and SLA, that stuff was mind blowing. Carl can attest that. Like,
oh my God, it explains so much to me about my behaviors.
So
why I act the way, and helps me
that's
understand
why therapy is so beneficial
children.
too, along with the step work and the fellowship. Like really, it should be like that piece of paper you say when you divide up like our life into different cubes, like one's therapy, one's gym, one's fellowship. Like we have to have like kind of a nice little balance.
A recovery box is what we need. A recovery box. You know, one of the things you had mentioned earlier, Jeff, is burn it if you need to, right? That was one of the things that I did. And I tell people, you know, when we're done with our 5th step, if you want to go burn that thing, go burn it. But our book says, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Taking this book down from the shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 step. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an ark through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimmed on the cement into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? And how important is it, Jeff, for us after we have gone through this 5th step process with someone to take that time to reflect?
That's a great point, because it's such a hard thing to do for so many people. It creates a lot of fear and anxiety. So it's important to remind yourself once you go through to, like, what was this experience like? How's it making you feel? Do you feel a sense of relief? Do you feel better? Do you still have fear, anxiety? And you know, people react differently. And generally, my experience is that people do feel a sense of relief, and they feel like they accomplished something that's quite hard. But you know, you said a great thing before, which was like, not everyone lets it all out. So like, you know, you revisit it. But you know, life is like painting a bridge. You know, you start at one end, you get to the other, you're not done, you start all over again. You know, when I die, my inbox will be full. You know, there's always things we have to deal with. And it's fluid. I have good days and bad days. You know, sometimes I'm like, I'm in a great mood and I don't know why. And other days I'm in a dark spot, and maybe I know, maybe I don't. It's just what it is. And you just keep working through it. That's the beauty of recovery.
So I don't know about you guys when you did your first, when I did my first 5th step, I didn't take that hour to reflect. I just like went on with my day, right? Like I was like, zooming and cruising and being a mom and everything else. I never took that time to stop and actually process what I had actually done, what I had told somebody. And so when I'm working with people today, I'm like, you follow this book to a T afterwards. I don't care where you have to go to sit still and not be interrupted, but take that time to reflect and review, because it's going to catapult you into the next step.
Go to your therapist. Go to your therapist and talk about it.
But I mean, just even after doing it, not just, obviously take it to your therapist later, but right after we're done, stop for a moment, because this is really going to create it's a spiritual development piece that I think a lot of people miss, where they get into this busyness of life right after they've reflected on this big event that they were so hyped up over through their whole first processes of their recovery. And if they don't take the time to reflect on those first 4 steps and what we've reviewed, they're missing that spiritual connection that brings them to their higher power. Because that's where you're praying about your fears, each fear individually, you're reflecting on what you've learned and processing it, and journal. And like Carl just said, he just said journal after as well. So you know what your feelings are, but you have to do it right away. If you get caught up in the day-to-day of life, it's the same as skipping your 4-step. You won't do your 4-step if you stop after 3.
Commitment is a huge spiritual principle in this step. And a lot of steps really, but commitment is huge.
I think people miss that spiritual principle if they don't do this part.
And because what the thing is, and that it's important, especially with commitment, is how many commitments did we make when we were using? And we had no intention of actually following through with them. You know what I mean? But we've gotten to step 4 now, step 5, and you know what I mean? And we're showing our commitment through our action. You know what I mean? Like we're sitting with someone, we're talking about our pain, and then we're being courageous. We're walking through fear. You know what I mean? We're trusting, we're having faith. There's a lot of spiritual principles, and the self-honesty in this is huge in this step.
And there's a lot of promises that come with this step. The promises that come with this step, we can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease.
Yes.
Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. This is where we go from belief to experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared from us will often come strongly. And we feel we are on the broad highway, hand in hand. And this is where it comes in with the spirit of the universe. And we can't reach that spirit of the universe if we miss that reflection piece.
And I think, Jeff, you were just saying it before, staying in the moment. Is that what you're going to say?
Yes. Yeah. So, it's, when we talked about allowing yourself to sort of process it a bit, it's about being in that moment, having some mindfulness. I know we have to end shortly, but the one of the things I want to mention, it's really about learning. It's wisdom. It's like every day we should always try to learn something. Forget about people in recovery or not recovery. It's always good to learn. It's always good to learn things. That's one of the the principles of Stoicism. Every day you should create knowledge. You should learn something.
Absolutely. Don't be the smartest person in the room, right?
But the masks have to go in this step.
And I'd like to see you've been very successful with that.
So, Jeff, how important is it for it was important for me, and I kind of know the answer to this, but for people to get closure by doing some sort of physical act, like you said, burning it, or I had to write some letters to people that I had resentments for because they have passed away. So I burnt those letters with a spiritual advisor, and then I wrote letters later on that with my therapist that I never mailed. I just kept to myself, until I was ready to mail. How important is that physical, tactile piece of having closure?
I think it's really important. I think it's remarkably helpful because it's, every major religion in the world has some sort of, they have traditions and practices about life-changing events. So someone's born, there's a entrance to manhood, adulthood, femalehood, and marriage and death. They do. It's not just like, oh, we're going to be together. No, there's ceremonies and activities and things.
Sure.
Like a ritual.
Yes.
Rituals, exactly. So that allows us to transition to the next chapter.
Okay,
So,
transitioning.
And the rituals, I like this you brought up, and we'll close in a second here, but rituals are very, very important to everything in life. Running is huge in my life.
Yeah.
I have rituals before you walk out the door. I do a couple things. I walk to a certain area, I stretch, I get my watch ready, I turn my music on, blah, blah, blah. So rituals are very, very important, especially in this step too, is, get your ritual down after whatever it is, and I also want to say, I know Jeff is a therapist, and we spoke a lot here about going to your therapist and doing your fifth step and your sponsor. But also it says in the book that we can go to a clergyman, which you've gone to, Tiff, and a doctor, a complete stranger. Even he says a complete stranger may prove the best. Right. That's on page 61 in the 12 and 12. May prove the best, because when we talk to a complete stranger, it's not like we're going to be embarrassed by them. They don't know who we are, where we've been, what we've done. Oh my God, you're that guy who did blah, blah, blah. No, I'm just talking to a complete stranger, somebody in the room, probably another alcoholic or a good sponsor, about my fifth step. And it just, I think it's much easier. But again, my sponsor is completely different because he knows me inside and out, and it works perfectly for me. But not just a therapist, not just a sponsor, but there are other things. Read page 61. It goes into a little bit more detail.
And it talks about having a closed mouth friend. A closed mouth friend is what it refers to.
Yeah, you don't want any of us on this show to do your fifth
closed
step.
mouth friend. So,
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding.
But having that closed mouth friend is important. But in also when it says like going to a perfect stranger, I'll give you a prime example. How sometimes we get up in meetings with perfect strangers and share our story, right? There's nobody we may never see these people ever again in our life. How we encourage people to write to Genesis House care of pen friends. We're writing an anonymous letter to a person we don't know. And that's talking to a closed mouth anonymous person, right? People we don't even know. I will also say there's been several times that rather than calling my sponsor or another person in my network, I've called that AA hotline and they pick up and you get to have a small discussion. Of course, they're going to refer you to your sponsor or someone else to talk to, but they listen to you. And I was able to share things where I wasn't ready to share with other people on that AA hotline. So
I'm laughing because at 1 p.m. our time, Eastern time, I always go in this Ireland meeting and share first before I share my network with my sponsor, so I can get it out first, like practice saying it and ball to these people that just talk really fast and don't know me, and they're on Ireland. And it's so funny you say it because I do that every pattern.
When I'm on that Good Morning Avalon meeting, I don't share like I did last night with you, Sky, and those people on Friends in Recovery. Friends in Recovery is my home group. You guys know me personally. I've shared my stuff with you. You understand me. We've developed relationships. I haven't developed those close-knit relationships, and I share differently on that meeting.
Yeah. Well, guys, we talked about a lot of things on here, how to do our fifth step. Carl said, let's do it on the show. Carl, if you want to do your fifth step on the show, we're here for you for that, I guess.
We'll do Ed's fifth step.
It could be a while. Next
week.
Exactly. But, this is a perfect example of the clinical piece of the fifth step, and not just the clinical piece, but bringing other people into our lives and doing this fifth step. It's not just, this cut and dry way of doing the fifth step. So I'm going to close with this. I'm going to read the fifth step: admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Guys, it's simple. It's not always easy. But it's necessary. This fifth step is absolutely necessary to move on to the next steps, and the steps are in there for a reason. So, as Jeff kind of said, get that garbage, get that baggage out, stop at the train station, throw it all out, keep your carry-on bag and move on, because more of that garbage. More garbage is going to come on. More garbage is going to, you're going to accumulate because you're going to have to take that train again. So real quick before we close, I do want to ask our listeners if anybody is interested in doing service work. We are looking for somebody who is more tech savvy, somebody who can make their way around
social media,
or
someone
a
like
website.
We need a podcast intern.
Podcast intern. Yeah.
Podcast intern who's someone who can do service work, who is really, like Ed said, tech savvy and really in with the social media network and the algorithms and how they work.
Yeah. So we're looking for that. Please send your resume to help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com. That's help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com. And it'll help the show. It'll help us. It'll help you too. Getting that experience that you need. And Jeff, thank you so much for a wonderful show. I really appreciate it. And ladies, another great show. At the beginning of the show, we were like, what are we going to talk about? It goes on over an hour.
Oh, you said that.
About everything.
You're the one who always says that.
I know that. I always say that. But anyways, guys, Jeff, thank you. And everybody in the Facebook Live, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And stay sober, everybody.
This concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.